This happened just a week ago. I was home alone in my new rental house. It felt quiet, but that quiet was different. I had moved to this small town hoping to find peace after my messy breakup. The house was at the end of a cul-de-sac, surrounded by all the usual suburban stuff: old brick homes, overgrown bushes, and rusted cars. It seemed perfect for a fresh start. The first few nights passed uneventfully. I set up my living room, got comfortable, and fell asleep with the TV on. But on the third night, I woke up around 2 a.m. Something felt off. I heard whispers coming from the living room. It was faint, but it made the hairs on my neck stand up. I thought maybe it was just my imagination, so I rolled over and tried to sleep. But I couldn't shake that uneasy feeling. Over the next few nights, those whispers became clearer. I could almost make out words. I lay in bed, my heart racing, debating whether I should get up and check. Strange laughter echoed outside, but I never saw any kids playing. It was odd. I convinced myself it was just tiredness playing tricks on my head. Finally, one night, I decided I had to confront it. I crept into the living room, the shadows creeping alongside me. My stomach churned with every step. I heard that laughter again, chilling and haunting. Was it a game? A trick of the wind? I didn't want to think about it, so I turned back to my bedroom, trying to shake it off. Then a few nights later, I woke up again. The whispers were louder this time. It sounded like two people arguing. I felt cold as I listened, my heart pounding. I wanted to turn on the lights, to drown out what I was hearing, but I stayed frozen. And just like that, it went silent. An unsettling quiet filled the air, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. That's when I heard it. Liam. It felt like ice ran through my veins. I spun around quickly, but the room was empty. I blinked, my breath catching. Was I dreaming? No. My heart raced as I stared into the dark corners of the room. I wanted to run, but my feet felt glued to the floor. Then, clearer than before, I heard it again. Liam, where are you? My skin crawled. It felt so close, like someone was right there with me, whispering from just beyond the darkness. I took a step back, my breath coming in short gasps. I turned to the window, thinking maybe I'd spot something outside. For a moment, I thought I saw a figure standing there, right in my yard. I blinked, and it was gone. Just like that, my heart thudded. I didn't know what to do. I could still hear that haunting whisper in my ears, echoing with my name. I was alone, but I felt anything but safe. I pulled the curtains tight and tried to convince myself I was just being silly. But deep down, I knew it was far from over. The next day, nerves still tingling from last night's whispers, I decided to distract myself. I needed to get out of the house, so I took a walk around the neighborhood, hoping to find some normalcy. The sun was shining and the air felt fresh, but I couldn't shake the lingering fear. I passed a few houses, all the same quiet suburban vibe. This was a place where life seemed uneventful. But as I strolled further, I noticed an old woman sitting on her porch. She peered at me curiously. I hesitated, then thought maybe she could help me understand what was happening in my new town. "Hey there, young man. You're new around here, aren't you?" she called out. "Yeah, just moved in a week ago," I replied, forcing a smile. "Everything's been fine." "Is that so?" Her eyes narrowed, as if she could see through my facade. "You shouldn't be out here alone at night." I raised an eyebrow. "Why's that?" "The last family that lived in your house, well, let's just say they left in a hurry. Never spoke of it, but you can feel it, can't you?" I felt my stomach drop. "Feel what?" She leaned in closer. "There are things that don't like to be disturbed. They want to be left alone," she whispered, looking around as if someone might overhear us. I laughed awkwardly, but dislike and disbelief simmered in my chest. "I appreciate the tip, but I'm sure it's just an old house settling or something." "Keep your wits about you," she warned, her voice low. The intensity in her gaze chilled me. I nodded, not wanting to seem rude, and continued on my walk. But her words echoed in my mind. What did she mean? I quickened my pace, feeling the knot in my stomach tighten. When I returned home, an unsettling stillness greeted me. I walked through the door and stepped into the living room, immediately feeling that familiar unease. I flipped on the TV for noise, hoping it would drown out my thoughts. As the images flickered on screen, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my friend Sam. "How's the new place? Are you settling in?" "Trying to. Just a lot of weird noises at night," I replied, trying to shake off the ominous warning from the old woman. "Just the house settling. You're good," Sam responded almost instantly.
but I wasn't convinced. That night, sitting alone in the dim light, I heard it again. Faint whispers floated through the house. Panic rose up inside me. I immediately grabbed my phone and switched the light on. Then it happened. Liam. The voice was clearer, more demanding, more real. "Who's there?" I shouted, voice trembling. Silence hung in the air. But then I saw it. A shadow slipped past the window, darting behind the bushes in my front yard. My heart raced as I moved to the window, peering out into the darkness. There was nothing, just my empty yard. I knew I should have felt safe, but dread pooled through my stomach. I stepped back from the window, shaking. That's when I noticed a piece of paper on the table. It was folded neatly, an envelope with my name scrawled across it. I hadn't seen it before. With shaking fingers, I opened it, and my blood ran cold as I read the words. "If you want to find out the truth, you must go where they linger."
What did that even mean? I glanced back towards the window, and my heart raced at the thought of who or what was waiting outside. I spent the night tossing and turning, adrenaline coursing through my veins. I couldn't shake the note's ominous message from my mind. It felt like a challenge, a question unanswered, lingering in the shadows of my thoughts. The whispers had come before. Would they return tonight? Morning broke, and I forced myself to get out of bed, taking deep breaths to center my mind. I pulled up my phone, scrolling aimlessly, hoping to find some normal distraction, but the message from the old woman sat heavy on my conscience. The day dragged on, and I figured I needed to confront this head-on. Perhaps I needed to understand what "where they linger" meant. I decided to explore my backyard, to see if there was something I had missed. After all, the shadows in my window had felt all too real. The backyard seemed ordinary enough, a few trees, a patch of grass, and a row of hedges lining the fence. But as I dug my fingers into the soil, my fear morphed into determination. I cleared a few weeds, revealing the earthy scent beneath. My heart raced at the idea of digging deeper. What if there was something hidden just below the surface? Then something caught my eye, a glinting object partially buried by dirt. With trembling fingers, I unearthed it. My breath hitched as I revealed a small, tarnished locket. I opened it, but it was empty inside, just a fragile piece of metal. Turning it over, I noticed faint etchings on the back. At first, I couldn't read it. The letters were scuffed and dulled. I rubbed it gently to reveal the words, "Remember us." My blood ran cold again. Who were they? I stood, the weight of what I held settling heavily in my pocket. That's when I noticed movement at the edge of the woods backing my house. I squinted, but the shadows darted away. Someone, or something, was out there. Adrenaline kicked in, sending me bolting towards the back door. "Hello?" I called out, the sound trembling as it left my lips. "Is someone there?" No response, just the rustling of leaves in the wind. I hesitated, feeling like a fool for yelling into nothingness, but every instinct screamed at me to protect myself. I closed the door, locking it behind me, and returned to pacing the living room, where I felt marginally safer. It was then I heard it, a soft thump against the window. My heart dropped. I glanced over, bracing myself. The curtains swayed gently, but no one was there. I approached cautiously, ready to pull them aside, revealing the quiet street beyond. Every rational part of me wanted to convince myself I was just imagining things. But just as I was about to step away, I saw it again, a flash of a figure just barely caught between the trees. Fear twisted in my gut. "Liam?" The voice slipped through the air, soft and beckoning. It was the same voice I had heard the night before, now so real it felt like a physical touch.
"Who are you?" I shouted, unable to keep the tremor from my voice. But it only whispered back, the sound fading into the wind. "You're not safe here." Something sparked in me, a deep, unsettling urgency. I had to know what was happening in this town. I had to seek out the truth before whatever lingered slipped further away. The tension wrapped around me, and I turned towards the door, heart pounding. The game had just begun. The next day, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, not just in my yard, but in the entire neighborhood. After breakfast, I decided to go for a walk to clear my head. I had to get out of the house and away from the whispers that still echoed in my mind. The air felt thick with tension as I strolled through the streets. An unusual hush enveloped the neighborhood. It was too quiet. I couldn't help but glance around, half expecting to see the shadow from last night lurking behind a tree or peering out from a window. My mind raced with thoughts of what I might find. I made my way to the small park a few blocks away. As I walked, I observed the other houses. Most seemed deserted, their shades drawn tight. I spotted a woman watering her plants, but she didn't look up. I wondered if everyone was avoiding the outside world, or if they were just as unnerved as I was.
Once in the park, I found a bench and sat down, hoping to focus my scattered thoughts. My fingers traced the edge of the locket in my pocket, feeling its smooth surface. I needed answers, but where would I even begin? Just then, I caught a flicker of movement out of the corner of my eye. A boy, maybe 12, approached the park's edge, peering through the bushes. His clothes were ragged and too big for him. I felt an odd pull towards him, as if he understood what I was going through. "Hey!" I called out, startled by my own boldness. He stepped closer, his eyes wide with curiosity, but he didn't say anything. I shifted on the bench, trying to gaze his intentions. "Are you okay?" He nodded slowly, then leaned in, his voice barely above a whisper. "You need to be careful. They can hear you." "What do you mean? Who can hear me?" Panic laced my words. "The shadows," he said, glancing around as if expecting them to emerge. "They know when you're looking for them." My heart pounded again, and I felt a chill run down my spine. I had barely spoken about what was happening, yet this boy seemed to grasp the depth of my fears. "How do you know?" I asked, desperate for clarification. He hesitated, chewing his lower lip. "I saw them last week. They wanted something, but I didn't understand." He stared at the ground, his gaze filled with dread. "Then they came for me." "Came for you? What do you mean?" He backed away slightly, shaking his head. "I shouldn't talk to you. Please, just go home." Before I could respond, he bolted, disappearing into the trees. Confusion washed over me. What had just happened? I couldn't stay passive any longer.
I sprinted after him, but he was gone, swallowed up by the shadows of the woods. Frustrated, I stood still, my thoughts swirling. "What do you know?" I muttered to myself. This wasn't over. I had to get to the bottom of whatever this was. As I walked back towards my house, the weight of the day's events pressed down. Shadows danced at the edge of my vision, and I swore I heard the boy's voice again, whispering in the wind. "Be careful." But now it was more than just whispers. I felt eyes watching, following me from the trees. I quickened my pace, and as I reached my front door, a sudden gust of wind rushed past me, chilling my bones. Then, everything went dark. I struggled to open my eyes, but darkness clung tightly. I blinked rapidly, desperate for some source of light. My heart raced as I pushed myself up, but I was met with an overwhelming sense of confusion. Had I fallen asleep? I couldn't be sure. As my senses started to kick in, I felt the cool floor beneath me. I realized I was inside my house, but the air felt different, charged and heavy, like something was lurking just out of sight. Panic washed over me. I fumbled for my phone, praying for the comforting glow of its screen. Finally, I found it. I turned the flashlight on, its beams slicing through the inky blackness. The familiar surroundings of my living room felt foreign, shadows flickering like whispers. Every creak of the old house made me jump. "Hello?" I called out, my voice shaky. Silence answered. I steeled myself, taking a cautious step forward, my feet unsteady. I had to figure out what was happening. Just as I reached the hallway, I heard it. A soft whisper, the faint sound of my name. "Help me." It was distant, like a ghost tethered to my thoughts. "Is someone there?" I called out, my throat tightening. The whisper came again, more insistent this time. "Help me." I hesitated, unsure whether to follow the sound or flee, but the voice was hauntingly familiar, like an echo of the boy's warning. I took a breath and crept down the hall, the beam of light from my phone illuminating each step. Something tugged at my gut, urging me onward. I moved towards the living room. Tables were upturned, and furniture was knocked out of place, as if there had been a struggle. My heart raced as I glanced around. Had someone broken in? I needed to be brave, but the fear threatened to overwhelm me. Before I could collect my thoughts, I caught a glimpse of movement. A shadow darted past the window. My pulse quickened. I didn't want to be alone anymore, not with whatever darkness lingered in my house. "Hello?" I shouted again, more forcefully this time. "Who's there?" "Help me," came the voice again. It was closer now, almost right behind me. I spun around, shining my light toward the sound, revealing nothing but empty walls. But then, something caught my eye. On the ground was a small, glimmering object. I bent down, the light flickering over it. It was the boy's locket, the one he had touched in my memory. My breath quickened. Why was it here? Before I could process this unsettling discovery, a heavy thud echoed from the kitchen. I straightened up, heart pounding. I wasn't alone anymore. I had to know what was in there. With shaky hands, I crept down the hall, every inch of the house feeling alive with tension. As I reached the doorway to the kitchen, time seemed to slow. I hesitated for a moment, gripping my phone tightly. Then I took a breath and pushed the door open. That's when I saw it. There, standing in the shadows of the kitchen, was a figure, indistinct and shifting. My breath hitched. I blinked, but it wasn't gone. It was taller than me, dark and ominous. "Help me," the voice echoed again, soaked in despair. The figure stepped closer. My feet felt glued to the floor, my instinct screaming at me to run. But I knew I had to confront whatever this was. I had to know why I was being pulled into this darkness. Just as I gathered the courage to step forward, the lights flickered on. And then it spoke again, clearer now. "You shouldn't have looked for us." And in that moment, the ground beneath me shifted, and I realized that everything was about to change. My breath came in short gasps as the figure loomed closer, its features still obscured in shadows. My phone trembled in my hand, the beam illuminating the empty space between us, but it did little to dispel the creeping dread. "Who are you?" I managed to whisper, my voice barely audible over the pounding of my heart. The figure paused, the tension thick in the air. "You shouldn't have looked for us." The words hung between us, heavy with meaning I couldn't grasp. My mind raced. Looked for whom? The boy? The locket felt like a lead weight pressing against my palm. Before I could process anything further, the figure moved again, edging into the light. My stomach dropped. There was a hint of a face, pale, hollow eyes that seemed to reach into me. Panic clawed at my throat, but I fought against it. I had to hold my ground. Just then, the kitchen door swung shut with a deafening bang. The sound jolted me into action. I didn't want to be trapped in here with whatever that was. Fumbling, I turned to dart back into the living room, the beam from my phone illuminating a path through the chaos. Then I heard it, a sharp, desperate cry. It echoed from the unseen parts of my home, unmistakably sounding like the boy's voice again. "Help me, please." My instincts kicked in. I couldn't ignore it. I rushed to the hallway, every step filled with dread. "Where are you?" I shouted, hoping to guide him to me. The house was eerily quiet again, but I could feel something lingering, like thick fog wrapping around me. I felt completely exposed, and the hair stood up on the back of my neck. I stopped in my tracks, realizing I was at the end of the hallway, facing the closed door to the basement. The boys' cries were louder now, desperate and choked. I swallowed hard. "Is someone down there?" I called out, feeling like a fool to even speak. Silence answered. The knot in my stomach tightened. The basement felt ominous, a dark maw leading into uncertainty. Yet something guided me closer, a force compelling me to open that door. I reached for the knob, my hands shaking uncontrollably. As I turned it, the door swung open, revealing the steep, shadowy stairs descending into utter darkness. The air was cold. It sucked the warmth from my body. I blinked, peering down, listening intently. "Help, please." The voice was faint but clear, calling from below. I had a decision to make. I could flee this house and never look back, or I could take the plunge into whatever lay beneath. Just as I poised to step down, the lights flickered again, and suddenly the whispers grew louder, swirling around me. "You shouldn't have come here. You shouldn't have looked for us." A sudden chill ran through me, and I felt the ground tremble beneath my feet. The house was alive with voices, growing louder, thrumming with an energy I couldn't understand. I took a deep breath, ready to descend into the unknown, but then the lights went out completely. Darkness enveloped me, and in that instant, I realized I might never find my way back. The darkness swallowed me whole, and I stood frozen at the top of the basement stairs, my heart racing. My instinct screamed at me to turn around and flee, but the boy's voice echoed in my mind. "Help me, please." With a shaky breath, I took a step down, more afraid of what I might miss than what lurked below. The cold air sent shivers down my spine, making my skin prickle. I gripped the railing tightly, my knuckles turning white as I descended into the inky blackness. Each step creaked beneath my weight, the sound amplified in the sheer quiet. "Where are you?" I called out, my voice wavering. There was no response, just silence so thick it felt like a living thing pressing against me.
I reached the bottom of the stairs and found myself in a narrow space. I turned on my phone's flashlight, the weak beam flickering across the damp walls, revealing mold and remnants of forgotten memories, tools lying abandoned, an old bicycle rusting in the corner. Then I heard it again, a whimper, barely audible but unmistakable. It came from behind a stack of boxes. My breath caught in my throat as I approached the jumble, scrambling over old newspapers and dusty cardboard. I felt like I was intruding in a sacred space filled with lost things. As I moved further into the basement, I squinted into the shadows. That's when I saw it, a figure huddled behind the boxes. My heart thudded painfully in my chest. "Is that you?" I whispered, trying to keep my voice steady. The figure shifted, and for a moment I was certain it was the boy. But when the light hit them, I was met with something entirely different. A girl, pale and wide-eyed, staring at me.
She seemed trapped in fear, her hair matted against her forehead. "What happened?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She opened her mouth, but no words came out, just a desperate gasp, and I could see her shaking, my gut twisted with alarm. Before I could reach out to her, a low rumble vibrated through the basement. The entire room felt like it was alive, pulsing with a force I couldn't understand. "No," she suddenly screeched, darting back into the shadows. "You can't be here." I took a step back, confusion settling in. "What are you talking about? I'm trying to help." My head spun with questions. Who was she? What had happened to the boy? Then I remembered the whispers I'd heard before the lights went out. "You shouldn't have come here." A chill ran down my spine as I realized the weight of those words. Was this girl connected to whatever presence had filled the house? Before I could react, the basement door slammed shut above me, plunging us into a suffocating darkness. Panic surged through my chest. I was trapped. "Get out!" she screamed suddenly, and the urgency in her voice shook me. "They'll find you!" I turned to run back towards the stairs, but my flashlight flickered and died, leaving me in darkness once again. I fumbled for my phone, but the screen showed only a dim glow. At any moment, it could fail too. "Help!" I shouted, hoping someone outside could hear me. The girl was gone, vanished into the shadowy corners of the basement. I was alone. But then, the whispers returned, louder and clearer than before. "You shouldn't have searched for us." And that's when I realized it wasn't just my safety at stake. The house held more than just ghosts of the past. It had its claws in me, and whatever lay within wasn't done with me yet. The air grew thick, and I felt an unsettling pressure in my chest. The whispers continued, swirling around me, but the words were indistinguishable. "What do you want?" I yelled into the blackness, desperate for a response. But the only answer was a ringing silence, as if the darkness itself was holding its breath. I moved slowly, trying to find the wall. My fingers grazed the cold, damp surface. I had to get out of there. My heart thumped against my ribcage like a caged bird. The memory of the girl flashed in my mind. There had to be an explanation for her fear. With a sudden resolve, I pulled out my phone and focused on the dim light. It illuminated just enough of the space around me. Muffled sounds echoed, almost like footsteps, confirming my growing dread. I was no longer alone. I took a shaky breath and moved towards the stairs, my heart racing as memories of the boy's voice returned in disturbing clarity. "Help me." It was a plea that felt like a warning now. What had I gotten myself into? That's when I noticed something out of the corner of my eye, a flicker of movement, a shadow darting behind the boxes, closer to the wall. I froze, half expecting to see the girl again.
But instead, a larger silhouette emerged, its outlines shifting like smoke against the cold concrete. It wasn't just a figment of my fear. This was something else. "Who's there?" I asked hoarsely, the tremor in my voice betraying my terror. The shadow hesitated, and for a brief moment I thought it might speak. Suddenly, the air turned icy. A low growl reverberated through the room, a chilling sound that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. The shadow swelled, growing larger, more defined. My mind raced. This was no ordinary presence. I took a step back, bumping into an old shelf that clattered noisily. Panic surged, and without thinking, I turned and sprinted for the stairs. I stumbled in the darkness, my phone's light flickering with my frantic movements. The whispers grew louder, almost angry now, as if I had awakened something dormant. Just as I reached the bottom step, a hand gripped my ankle, yanking me down. I fell hard, striking my shoulder against the concrete as sharp pain shot through me. I gasped and kicked, the fear crescendoing inside me. "Let me go!" In the chaos, I dropped my phone, and for a brief instant the room was plunged into velvety darkness again. I scrambled to regain my bearings, breathing heavily, desperately trying to push myself up. Someone or something was holding on to me. The growling intensified, morphing into a desperate wail, a sound that echoed eerily in the confined space. As I twisted, my frantic movements abruptly came to a halt. I saw the girl again, her wide eyes staring at me with a mix of fear and urgency. "Don't!" she cried out just as the shadows lurched toward us. "You've got to run!" I felt like the ground was slipping from under me, and in that moment of horror, I understood what it meant to be trapped, not just in a basement, but in a nightmare I couldn't escape. As the whirling darkness enveloped me, I screamed for help one last time, and then everything went dark. I gasped as consciousness returned, the air around me feeling electrified. My senses flooded back in a wave. I was lying on hard ground, and my heart pounded in my ears. Panic clawed at me as I tried to sit up. The darkness felt almost tangible, wrapping around me like a suffocating blanket. "Hello," I called out, my voice trembling. I strained to listen, hoping for an answer. Instead, there was only silence, thick and oppressive. My mind raced. Where was I now? Had it all been a dream, or was I still trapped in that basement? I fumbled for my phone in the dim light, fingers brushing against its cool surface. I dropped it, and now it lay flickering weakly beside me. I picked it up and felt a surge of relief as its light pulsed on, illuminating the space around me. But instead of the basement, I saw a narrow corridor lined with rotting wooden beams. My heart sank. The air smelled musty, mixed with something vaguely sweet, like decay. I pushed myself up carefully, wincing from the pain in my shoulder.
I turned to look behind me, but the darkness was a solid wall, almost like it was alive, closing in again. "Please, just stop messing with me," I shouted, frustration spilling over. My voice echoed down the corridor, and I listened closely. There was a sound, like a whisper, low and indistinct, growing louder than I had ever heard before. It echoed, bouncing off the walls, wrapping around me. I took a step back, feeling the pulse of dread rise in my chest. The whispering morphed into something menacing, a cacophony of voices layered over one another, blending and shifting. My mind flicked back to the girl's plea, her eyes wide with the urgency to flee. What had I stumbled into? I turned and began to walk cautiously down the corridor, the beam of light illuminating patches of warped flooring and splintered walls. Each creak beneath my feet felt amplified, reverberating with an unsettling finality. It was worse than the basement. It felt as if the very structure held its breath, watching me. As I moved deeper, I noticed doors lining the walls, some ajar, others closed tight. I hesitated, knowing I didn't want to open any of them, not without understanding what lay beyond. Still, I felt drawn. One door, slightly cracked, seemed to pulse with energy, a faint glow spilling out from the edges. Against every instinct screaming at me to turn back, I found myself reaching for the handle. "What's inside?" I whispered, half hoping it wouldn't respond. As my fingers brushed the cold metal, a sudden chill cascaded over me, and for a moment I hesitated. "Don't," echoed a voice, clear and sharp this time. It was the girl, her warning slicing through the chaos. My heart raced as I jerked my hand away. I had to get out. I needed to find her and understand what was happening. Just as I turned to retrace my steps, a loud bang echoed behind me. One of the doors had slammed shut with unnatural force. I spun around, breathing heavily. The shadows flickered, reacting with a disturbing energy. Something is here, I thought. Then I realized I wasn't alone anymore. The shadows coalesced, swirling together into a tangled mass that seemed to click and thrum with anticipation. I felt a cold sweat prickle at my skin as I pressed against the wall, searching for an escape. The whispers grew louder, 100 voices spilling over one another in a chaotic symphony of fear. "Don't, don't, 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 don't. Run!" The girl's voice broke through the cacophony, more urgent than before. Without thinking, I turned back the way I'd come, feet pounding against the floorboards as I sprinted toward the corridor exit. The darkness seemed to pulse with life, reaching out like tendrils, as if to ensnare me in its clutches. Just as I neared the end, a shadow materialized in front of me, blocking my path. Panic surged as I skidded to a halt, breath racing. A face emerged from the darkness, pale and gaunt. It was the boy, his eyes wide with fear. "You shouldn't have come here,"
he shouted, the depth of his voice echoing through the hall.
Where is she? I cried out, frantic. The girl! She was with you! He hesitated, glancing behind him as the shadows pulsed closer. It's too late! They'll take you too! His voice trembled, and I could see the raw terror etched on his features. But before I could respond, the shadows lunged forward, drawing him back into their depths. No! I screamed as he vanished. The whispers crescendoed, echoing the panic that surged through me. I can't stay here. I need to get out. With a surge of adrenaline, I rushed forward, pushing through the door that had been ajar earlier. It creaked ominously as I entered, and the dim light that spilled through illuminated a bizarre scene. A room lined with mirrors, each one reflecting endless corridors beyond. This space felt imbued with its own strange energy, a mix of dread and curiosity that simmered in the air. I stepped into the room, the floorboards creaking beneath me. My heart was pounding, but as I gazed into the mirrors, I caught fleeting glimpses of faces. Were they the lost souls of this place? The girl? The boy? They slipped away before I could focus, their expressions filled with dismay. Just then, the echo of whispers returned, but they became clearer, resonating like a warning. You need to remember us. You came looking for the truth. The voices felt familiar, a mesh of memories tugging at the edges of my mind. The mirrors began to shimmer, reverberating with the weight of the memories they held. I have to help you. I know it. I spoke fiercely, desperation fueling my resolve. I can't just leave you here. In that moment, a reflection in one of the mirrors caught my eye. A flicker of light shimmered within, pulsating as if it held its own heartbeat. Squinting closer, I saw a distorted version of myself stepping into the frame. Help me, my reflection mouthed silently, urging me closer. Overwhelmed with the urgency gripping me, I stumbled toward the mirror, palms pressed against the cool surface. I'll find a way, I promise. Suddenly, the whispers surged violently, a cacophony of voices rising in a frenzy. I felt an electric jolt rise through me, a tug from the mirror as though it wanted to pull me in. Remember us. We need you to remember. What are you? I shouted, feeling dizzy as the energy enveloped me. I'm not afraid. The shadows swirled rapidly, thrusting me away from the mirror as it shattered into 1,000 shards, each piece reflecting splintered images of loss and longing. I stumbled back as the fragments fell like rain, showering the room in a glimmer of light and darkness entwined. As the chaos quieted, a calm followed. The oppressive weight lifted momentarily. There was an unsettling stillness, as if the house had paused in breathless anticipation. I turned to scan my surroundings, uncertainty laden in my chest. I could still hear the lingering whispers, like ghosts hovering at the edges of my consciousness. I remember, I whispered, piecing together the fragments of what was lost. But what does it mean? An answer didn't come, and yet I found myself standing at a fork, one path back to the darkness of the basement, the other through the fragmented doorway leading outside. I glanced back toward the shattering mirrors, their reflections still swirling, filled with echoes of those I might never find again. Liam, the girl's voice called, faint yet urgent. The pull of the outside world whispered sweetly, the weight of every choice pressing upon me. I took a deep breath, clenching the locket tighter in my hand, feeling the cool metal against my skin. And with one final look back, uncertainty coursing through me, I made my choice and stepped toward the light, leaving the shadows behind. But I still can't shake the feeling that they're there, always watching. I guess I'll never know what truly lurked within those depths. Sometimes at night, when silence wraps around me like a blanket, I still hear them whisper my name.